Hi, so I'm here to tell you what I think is the worst food in the war on fat and weight gain and obesity. And I'm going to tell you in 5 minutes, and then we're going to look at it from a historic point of view, ancestral, scientific, and cultural. So first off, a little story. I want to talk about the Tsimane people of Bolivia. So back in 2010, researchers discovered that these people had the lowest incidence of cardiovascular disease in the world. So that was very, very interesting. So all the researchers around the globe started descending on this tribe en masse to investigate what was going on. Now, the Tsimane tribe was untouched by other more developed areas of Bolivia. So they just lived off the land, hunting animals, fish, gathering, vegetables, tubers, fruits. And researchers studied them, and of course they were exercising out in the sun, all that good stuff. And researchers studied them for 10 years, and as they studied them, the researchers themselves created these connections between this sort of remote tribe and more developed market towns in Bolivia. And as they did that, the Tsimane people started accessing the market and more modern foods. One food in particular that they added to their diet over the 10-year period. As they added this food to their diet, their body fat percentage went from 11% to 20%. And what was the food that they used? It was cooking oil. They were adding cooking oil for the first time to their diet. Vegetable seed cooking oil, canola oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, etc. So this was the only variable in their diet, and it looks ancestrally like these people were very much affected by consuming vegetable seed oils. So then I went back and I looked at the history of vegetable seed oil consumptions. And it's very interesting because in the 60s, that's when they started telling us that saturated fat consumption was very bad for us. And looking at the data in the States, saturated fat consumption was quite high. And then it fell by like 50% over a 60-year period. But Americans went from 15% obesity to 45% obesity, where they are at now, 42%. And so, saturated fat consumption came down, but obesity rates went up. Sugar consumption in 1998 started falling and fell by 20% because we were told that sugar was bad for us. And that started falling and it actually fell by 20%. But obesity rates were still going up. And interestingly, over that period, vegetable seed oil consumption also went up by 25%. So saturated fat consumption came down. Sugar consumption came down. Vegetable seed oil consumption went up. So that's very, very, very interesting to me. So we have ancestral evidence that it's a problem. We have historic data that it looks like it could be a problem, certainly from a correlation point of view. So I started looking at the science, and they've done, unfortunately, no studies in humans, but quite a lot of studies in animals and rats where they have fed either vegetable seed oils high in omega-6 fats, and compounds that these oils create when they oxidize in our body, like HNEs. And what happens is when you feed HNEs to mice, they get fat within 2 hours, or start going into weight gain mode within 2 hours. When you heat the oils, that weight gain goes up by a further 45%. So the science seems to be very interesting, or certainly enough to warrant some serious concern and further studies. And then if you look culturally at the history, particularly of the people of Singapore, Singapore is made up of Chinese, Malays, Indians, and some Europeans. Historically, the Chinese didn't cook in vegetable seed oils. They used lard, maybe a little sesame oil as well, but mostly lard. If you ask any old Chinese what they were using, it was lard. The Malays used coconut oil. The Indians were using ghee, and Europeans were using lard, butter, tallow, and other animal fats. So, ancestrally, this stuff was not in our diets. Culturally, it wasn't in our diets. The history seems to show that as the consumption of this stuff's gone up, it's got worse. And the science supports it as well. So my advice, get the vegetable seed oils out of your diet.